Oh, hey there, folks. This is your host, Kate Gaffney, and this is part 1 of 2 with my lovely friend, the screenwriter, actor, just wonderful human host. He's so many things. He's a playwright. He's an author. He's all of those things. And he's just a wonderful person. And this is part 1 of 2. We spoke for several hours, and I had to break it up a little bit because it's fascinating and I want you to know him and love him the way that I do. So this is part 1 of 2. Hey.
I don't think I've done an interview in in at least 10 years. Like where I'm the person being interviewed. I've interviewed a shit ton
So
of
many people,
in between,
yeah.
But I was rarely interviewed anyway, just because of I did a lot of hosting. So I was kind of like, oh wow, it's kind of fun to be on the other side.
Isn't it? My friend Amy, you may know her, Amy Enriquez, Ithamar's wife.
Vaguely. I know Ithamar.
Well, yeah. I've been Rachel McDowell connected us, and I was like, I really want to interview Amy, and we talked for almost 3 hours, and I was like, this I love doing. And then it made me think of you, and I was like, I'm bugging him again, and then I bugged Brian Hunt.
No. I get it, and I have nothing to promote. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and I have a wild kind of career and shit. So yeah. No, and I was listening to Punkies. And who's the other guy that you sent me? I was listening to both of those, and I was like, first of all, I was like, yeah, I love Punky. I was like, oh, this is pre-SNL. And she was, there's the customer service stuff, but then I don't know. There's plenty of stuff to talk about.
Yeah, and also I think, a version of we'll get into it, but a version of doing red carpet stuff. I mean, it's weird customer service, but you're not on equal footing. And I think customer service is anytime you're not on equal footing. I wouldn't say a lawyer dealing with another lawyer would be customer service, but a lawyer dealing with a client, I'm like, well,
I feel like a host. I did white guy modeling in Asia.
Okay,
that was
okay.
Okay, great.
Okay, here we go.
Awesome.
Okay, we're gonna start from the top. Here we go. Do you have any questions before we start?
No, let's do it.
Okay, here we go. Oh, hi! You're listening to Service from Hell, a podcast featuring people that are currently in customer service positions at the lucky few that got out and all of the good, bad, and infinitely irritating things that go along with that work. I'm actor and writer and comic Kate Gaffney, and I'm uniquely qualified to discuss this as I used to work at a very busy and very popular comedy club in Los Angeles, and at least one of you listening right now has probably grabbed me and told me you were ready to order when I was running around like a crazy person. So, let's eat! I'd like to welcome our first ever guest with a Wikipedia page, Jeff Locker.
Really?
Yeah. Originally from the great...
I don't know what that honor is. Is that an honor?
It's an honor.
A weird little...
Stop. Let me read your bio. Shush. Jeff, shush.
Okay.
Originally also from the great state of Ohio, Jeff is an actor, playwright, screenwriter, host, and author. He's appeared on Marvel's Agent Carter, which I have questions about, in the feature film Stasis, Warner Brothers release Disaster LA, and Taiwanese box office smash Formula 17. In multiple sketches on Jimmy Kimmel Live, and starred as Peter Timms in the play Chinglish, I hope I'm saying that right, by David Henry Hwang. Hwang.
Yeah, Hwang.
Dang it! David Henry Hwang, I'm very sorry. Among his several award-winning plays, the published and licensed Kate, go back. Here, what's happening? I'm just jumping ahead. Let me go back. Among his several award-winning plays, The Forgotten Place won the 43rd Samuel French Off-Broadway Short Play Festival and is published and licensed worldwide by Samuel French, which is a huge honor. The short film adaptation of The Forgotten Place won 21 awards during its film festival run. As a screenwriter, Jeff made The Blacklist Gladlist and won the Atlanta Film Festival Screenplay Competition. Fluent in Mandarin Chinese, he was the host of the 75th Golden Globe Awards Red Carpet Show. I better know Jeff from performing improv with him at a bunch of now defunct places, including iOS in the Second City Hollywood. And from our paths crossing in weird and wild, interesting, entertainment-y, Los Angeles-y ways right before the strike, he took me to a film festival, which was so lovely to see a lot of really cool films. So, Jeff, what made you want to become fluent in Mandarin? How has that helped you? How much do you love acting? Which do you prefer, writing or acting? Tell us all the things. Welcome.
Oh God. Okay. The Mandarin thing is it's still just a weird thing to me to talk about. Just because it's always because getting people's reactions, right? Like, and because I have a background in comedy, I always have to dismiss it in some way, shape, or form. You know what I mean? Like if Meryl Streep wins the Oscar, she's like, "Oh, thank you very much." You know what I mean? But comedian, we're like, "Oh, wow, I was just messing around on stage one day." You know what I mean? I don't know why I was doing that accent, but so I'd be like, "Hey, speak Mandarin," and on my good days, I'd be like, "Yes, I do." And on most days, I'll be like, "Yeah, weird white guy stuff, ain't it?" You know, and it's like they didn't ask for that. They didn't. They were just complimenting me. So yeah, so I was I was a language guy. I figured out I was a language guy very early on. Like, I mean, I come from, from Canton, Ohio, as you know very well. It's not the richest city, i.e., it's one of the poorest, like economically. Sorry, Canton, but you are. And I remember getting my dad used to do like interior cleanup and stuff, like after fires and stuff. And I remember he had a box of books. And a footnote, like I couldn't stand my dad. So this was not like a heartwarming father-son story at all. It was like he would bring a lot of crap home that was half burnt, including like cans of food, and it'd be like, that was dinner for a poor family. You know what I mean? So but we thought we're like scavengers as kids. We're like, well, look at all this cool stuff, and just like wipe off the ashes. And there were a couple dictionaries. There was a Spanish dictionary and a French dictionary. And I just was like super curious about it. And then I got I'm dating myself, but like a pen pal. And I signed up for a pen pal in school, and one was from Spain, one was from Mexico, and one was from France. And then I started taking French in like junior high school, and I would try to write them in French. And I just thought, especially from like that environment, like it just wasn't let's say kindly, it was not a healthy environment for me. But it was foreign languages, other countries was kind of a way out. It was my light at the end of the tunnel, even though I had no idea that I would end up living abroad for over half my adult life. It was a dream, and it was kind of like if I was going to dream, I was going to dream big. So my two big dreams were to be an actor and to travel the world, live abroad. So I got into a prep school called Phillips Exeter Academy, which is hoity-toity, the Harvard of high schools. It's Dead Poet Society, like it's that, but like with girls. And I'll let a lot of complicated stuff, but and no Robin Williams, sadly. But I had a teacher in junior high school who pulled me aside one day. She's black, great educator. She was my nemesis for a while. Also, fun fact, she's Macy Gray's mom. And so I grew up, I knew Macy Gray when she was young. And I know, weird, Canton's that place with like Macy Gray, Marilyn Manson, and like kind of me. So it just like, we just run the gamut of weirdness.
I did not know that. I read in your, I knew that from your Wikipedia, but I didn't know that like Macy was from there, and then Marilyn Manson was from there too. Interesting.
Yeah, Marilyn Manson. So this teacher, Mrs. McIntyre, pulled me aside one day, and she said, "I'm going to get you out of here. There's this program. It's called A Better Chance." She knew my family. I mean, everybody knew my family because my brothers were like troublemakers and in and out of jail, and you know what I mean. So like I was like the good kid, right? Quote unquote. I was like, I'd go into a new school, and they'd like be reading down the list, and they'd see locker, and they'd be like, oh, you could just see the teachers like, oh, fuck. Right. And I'd be like, no, I'm the good one. I'm the good one. I'm going to be the straight A student. Like, I do theater. You know what I mean? Like,
did you feel like you had to compensate for that? Was part of you being good?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, I'll be talking about in therapy for the rest of my life, like the concept of being the good kid, which in our society, we could talk about that all day, but like the idea of being the good kid, we used to be like, that's the good kid. And I'm like, but if you really want to shrink that whole concept, the pressure to not make a mistake in life, like your teenage years is supposed to be, your college is supposed to be about messing around and experimenting and doing all these things. And it's like when you're the good kid, you don't get to do any of those things, even if nobody is telling you that. It's so ingrained. And if you mess up, you're going to end up, one, a failure, two, like them, which is some heavy psychological shit. And I'm seeing you, and I'm like, yep, you get it. So especially from that area, like nobody in my family had ever gone to college. So to go to a prep school was like they didn't even know what that was. So I kind of applied without even talking to my family about it. And this teacher, this A Better Chance program, they called ABC. It was actually for minority kids. And this teacher waltzed me in, and she was a well-known educator in the area. She waltzed me in and she said, "We're going to make an exception because this kid's got it, and something's he's going to go somewhere." And they made an exception, and they actually added a category called for like financially disadvantaged kids. And so I like looked up prep schools, and the prep school I ended up going to, I had a radio station, and I had no concept of where it was in the echelons of schools, right? I just was like, it had a radio station. To me, that was like cool. Like Beverly Hills 90210, I think there was like a radio station. You know what I mean? Like I didn't have any concept of what I was getting myself into. And I think I applied to like 2 schools on the East Coast, and the rest were all in California because I was eventually going to go to Hollywood. And then I got into all of them, and I went to the school with the radio station. And then my teacher, she was like, "Oh my God, Phillips Exeter Cat, she's telling me what it is." And I was like, "Oh, that's awesome." Like a lot of senators and presidents and, famous people throughout history and da 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 da. And I was just impressed by the radio station. So I was like, I'm going to go there. And funny enough, I ended up doing radio. Like I had a radio show I went as a sophomore. And I had a radio show as a sophomore. Like I went and did the thing. Thank you, Ariana DeBose. You know what I mean? So I mean, I did the radio thing, which was super cool. But, also it was an extremely tough environment because these were kids that were born to go to prep school. Like a lot of the kids were like like I don't think I'd ever read a book, like not a real book. And like my first week we were reading Dostoevsky, and I'm like, what is happening here?
You're like, the books I've read are half burned. So this
like
is a
Judy
full book.
Blume. Yeah, I think I read like a Judy Blume book, you know what I mean? But like we didn't read books in my junior high school. Like it was mainly trying to keep people in school and out of jail, to be honest. And I don't think that's hyperbole. So
can I ask?
But anyway,
so just real quick. So what was it like? Obviously that teacher saw something in you, but what was it that like was the idea of getting into a prep school to be a feeder to a theater program, or was it just a feeder to college?
It was to get the fuck out. It was to get out.
Okay.
I mean, to be fair, like I had a Yale t-shirt that I got at like JCPenney's on sale. So like I used to wear a Yale t-shirt, but like that was never, I mean, I was a like, you can't tell me no kid, a straight A student, but like Yale in an area where I didn't know anybody. I don't think I knew anybody that even went to college. Like, my dad didn't even graduate from high school, you know what I mean? So I think it was all just anywhere but here and as far away as I can go. So if it was Hollywood, great. Yes. If it was France, so my junior year in high school, I went away to France. Like I applied to a program. I was taking French, and I was picking it up pretty quickly. And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna fucking go to France for a year, like 16 years old, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, baby. And then I went away to France junior year, and that changed my life because I found I was in a French family, kind of a bougie bourgeois, a French family. I was in a family where they all loved each other and like it felt they had family dinner. Like mine was, sorry family if you're listening, but also not sorry because
they were there.
What you did, but like yeah, like they're trust me, they're not listening to this. But you know what I mean? Like that we were not like a sit down family dinner and like talk about our days and enjoy each other's company. It was mainly just like, let's hope nothing crazy happens today, right? Like, and I can laugh about it now, and I'm sure some people are just like, oh, that poor kid, but it is what makes you, right? So, and then I went to France, and like, I was I had the least amount of French experience of all the kids in the school. There were like 60 of us from around the country. And by the end of the year, like I was fluent as fuck. Like I could convince French people that I was French. And that became my superpower. So foreign languages was my superpower. So like, I mean, yeah, it just, that and just the experience and being in a stable, healthy family environment and being around kids from around the world, you know what I mean? Like I was like, oh, I think this is who I was meant to be. I mean, this is now I'm saying this. At the time, I just was like, this is cool. And like, holy shit, I know how to say bad words in French. You know what I mean? Like, oh, this is awesome. but it changed the trajectory of, I mean, not only my like academic career, but also like my life, where I was like, I want to live abroad. I felt so oddly at home there. I think when you come from a place where you don't feel at home at your home, everywhere else is going to feel like home, because the reason that you don't feel like home at home, those things, those elements, those people are no longer there. And it's a complicated mix of, childhood trauma stuff, and also like I was different. And they, my family's very, I mean, now they're MAGA, some QAnon, evangelical. Some of them are like, we're the only ones going to heaven. Other religious people are, what I mean? There's a lot of that stuff. And if you were to meet me, I love people meet me and they're just like, they hear me talk about that and they're like, what? And then they would see like my brothers who are like covered in tats. And, I had a brother who was in jail for dealing drugs. You know what I mean? They're like, what was in the what happened was there a lightning thing, or like what was in the, were you exposed to like lead? I don't know. Like, what was it? And I'm like, I don't know, but I just went in a completely different direction. And part of it is being the good kid, right? So you do all the things that they didn't do. But I think, dude, I remember I was like 4 or 5. I remember watching the Oscars and turning to my mom and saying, that's what I want to do. And this is well before I was doing school plays, but I knew then. I've never been more sure of anything in my life than when we talk about, as a kid, I knew I was watching. And I'm sure part of it was that was glitz and glamour and everything that my family was not. But I also knew, I remember seeing the clips of the acting performances and, I just knew. And from then on, I did every school play. I ended up doing community theater. I auditioned for, I continued that when I went away to like prep school. I did theater in France, you know what I mean? And then it has never not been part of my life. Like art, this artistic side of me has never not been part of my life. And to be honest, I've managed to, on my good days when I'm like, fuck Hollywood and I'm tired, I don't want to do this, you know what I mean? Like I have a couple friends' brains. We have a mutual friend, Aaron Krebs, who just says, you're still doing it though. So at any given age, I'm still here. I'm still doing it. I might not be a series regular. I might not, but I'm still doing it. And so many of our friends have left.
That's right.
Right. We have a couple friends who have made it and made it big. And then we've had many more who have left, especially over the pandemic. So
sure.
So I'm still here. Right. You asked one question. And
no, I love it. Are you kidding? I'm enraptured. So you get into this prep school and the idea was not necessarily that you would then, like, it wasn't a feeder to Tisch or anything like that. It was, you're going to get you get these 4 years under your belt. You do as much. And now, was it a boarding situation where you no longer lived at home? Oh shit!
It was a boarding school. It's a 4-year boarding school. I went as a sophomore.
So that's like college. I mean, you got college and high school.
Yeah. It was yeah.
Wow.
And it was super intense. Like I remember first day of class, and kids were quoting authors and shit, and I'm like, we're only 15. What are you talking about? You know what I mean? Like,
relax.
Relax. Yeah. But I was also, the funny thing is like those schools, dorm life, hazing was a big thing, sure. Right? And the funny thing, and here's where I'm grateful for, I mean, here's the thing. I still am always going to be an Ohioan. I still wear it like a badge of honor. And part of it is because we were raised a certain way, and some of us were raised with certain ideals that are not good.
True.
But there are people around us that, this is how you talk to a server. This is how you talk to the waitress. Okay, hey, hon, do you want anything else? Like, oh, thank you, sweetie. You know what I mean? Like, there's those things, right? You're taught to respect people. You're taught to, respect your neighbors in certain ways, whatever. But, in a way, I was like going into Exeter, I was one of the street kids. You know what I mean? Like I was in the Afro-American society because I was like, I need to find my group of people that I feel comfortable with. And almost all of the, Afro-American students, Black students, almost all of them were scholarship kids. So I was also I had a full scholarship. So I was one of the scholarship kids. So it was like, the Black kids, me, a couple Latinos, a couple Asian, you know what I mean? And it's like, we were like our own kind of surrogate family. Like we kept, there was a lot of like, this person said this to me today, and I'd be like, like I remember I had a friend who had a picture of like a Lamborghini on his wall, and I was like, whoa, and he's like, yeah, he was like, we have that in like red and whatever, and I'm like, what is this world, right? And so then you'd go and hang out with your like other street kids, quote unquote, and they'd be like, oh yeah, this motherfucker said this thing to me, you know what I mean?
Like, you're like, oh, these are my people.
You know what I mean? Like,
yes, 100%.
yeah, like where are people? So I mean, it was kind of an advantage in terms of like I didn't take any shit. Like hazing was a big thing, and I remember them trying to haze me, and I just said, fuck off. Like,
good for you.
Hell no. Yeah, and that was part of the tradition, but like I had come from way worse than that, so I was not about to let anybody bully me or like once you escape a thing and you get somewhere that is so much better, like the shit is such a different, it's like this is such a more fragrant shit, like it's shit, but like I could put up with this, right? So it ended up benefiting me because I didn't deal with I didn't put up with that crap. So I also knew, once I got there and everybody was like, oh, this is what this place was, I was like, oh, I'm set. You know what I mean? Well, I mean, not set isn't as I'm like, it was a funnel school for like Harvard and Yale and the Ivies, and I'm like, holy shit, I might actually end up going to Yale or something. You know what I mean? So I'm like, if I work hard and do all the things I need to do, but I already knew I've already made it, right? No matter what, like I did this incredible thing. I was very aware of that. But at the same time, I needed the pinnacle of it, which was to get into a good school, a good college. So I did theater, I did music, I sang a cappella, like I still did my artsy fartsy stuff. I did every little play. And then every night I would calculate my grade point average every single night based on whatever test score or whatever, because I had to get into Harvard or Yale, which I never thought I would, but you know what I mean? Like, because, I was also surrounded by people who had privilege, and even though I was going to Exeter, that wasn't necessarily going to set me for life. You know what I mean? And a lot of them were legacy kids, and yeah.
The legacy kid, I could go on and on. I'm not gonna.
Yeah. Oh,
that's I can't
totally.
pull that Band-Aid. But so I just want to understand legally and logistically, because it was a boarding school, but you were on scholarship. Did your parents have to sign off and say? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And then were you there 12 months out of the year, or just the actual like school calendar year?
The school calendar year, I was a holdover.
Oh, you were? That's why I asked. I was kind of hoping.
I was a holdover. Yeah. So I saw that and I was just like, all of that I was one of the handful of kids that couldn't go home, like I knew I had classmates that, they jetted off to this place and that place. And I was like, I couldn't afford a plane ticket to go home for Thanksgiving for 5 days. Like, that's insane. Also, just to be fair, I didn't fucking want to go home.
Sure,
I was like, this is better. Like, I get to be here. Like, most of the kids aren't even here. Like, we have the campus to ourselves. So it was me and my dorm and like just a handful of the mainly like, there's like a couple South Korean kids and, mainly people whose parents live too far away and maybe one or two other scholarship kids. And I was like, this is awesome. For me, I wasn't sad. Like, I didn't, I mean, I'm sure my mom wouldn't like to hear this, but like, I was not homesick one day, out of the, like, I got on that plane. I had my knit tie on. I looked like I got on the plane to go away and I was like, bye. Like, I'm like out of here. Yeah. I was ready. And I've continued to have that attitude. So, coming from where I came from, it only lit a fire to not only do great things, but to go out and fucking like live my life. You know what I mean? Like, like I have nothing to lose. I mean, that is part of when you come from it. Like, you have nothing to lose, and it's probably not going to get worse. You know what I mean? So like, then just make it better.
Yeah.
So I wasn't I like applying to go to France. My parents knew that I was applying to the prep schools, but they just had to sign paperwork, but they didn't understand. They didn't have a concept of what that was. When I applied from France, I didn't even tell them. I applied for the school year, but I didn't even tell them. And then I told them when I went home for summer, I was like, I'm going to France next year. And they're like, what? But they were, listen, as a kid, I was like, I would, classic Gen X, like, we'd be gone all day, but parents never knew where the hell I was. As long as I wasn't in jail, we're good.
Yeah.
Like that's the standard of like, just don't come home in a cop car, and you're like, you're okay. And I'd be out like playing in the woods and the garbage dump and like foraging for like
Berries.
so what was France?
Yeah.
What was France? What was going off to New Hampshire? So um, yeah, yeah. I certainly had that adventurous spirit.
So do you think so you did you end up going for college? Did you end up going to one of the schools that you really wanted to?
I went to Yale.
That's what I thought. Okay. So tell us. So
Yeah.
the process of application into Yale was probably, I mean, especially considering that no one in your family had ever gone really anywhere. Was the school able to help you with the application process? And then would like having been at that prep school and being on scholarship, would that allow for scholarships at Yale, or like, how did that?
No, well, first of all, I was like, I'm going to apply to wherever. I was not, I did, my SATs were not perfect. My grades were really good. I did extracurriculars. I was an artsy fartsy kid. I was also a scholarship kid. You know what I mean? Disenfranchised, like family environment, like all of that, fun stuff that you can check off a box on your, but we had college counselors, and like our college counselor was the main guy. Like he was famous and feared throughout the country. And he was my college counselor, and he was like, here's the schools that I think you can get into. I actually went in with, here's the list. I had like 6 schools. It was like Yale, Brown, University of Chicago, Northwestern, Pomona, Ohio State. And no offense to Ohio State. Ohio State is great, but like, I'm not an Ohio State. First of all, also, I'm not going back to Ohio. Like what, he was like, maybe Oberlin, maybe, it's like trying to, because you're from Ohio, you have a better chance. And I'm like, first of all, not going back, but I'm going to apply wherever the fuck I want to apply. No extra help. He actually didn't. He was like, I'm not going to put my name on it then, because I can't, he had his own collateral. And I fucking got into every school that I applied to. And when I got the Yale thing, like I walked into his office and I put that letter down on his thing and I was like, I got into Yale. And he looked at me pissed off and went, I know. Like he wasn't even happy for me. And I was like, I didn't swear at the time, but like I would have but I picked the thing back up, walked out, and never spoke to him again.
What was did he feel threatened by you? Like,
weird. Yes.
Yeah.
A man being threatened by, also a grown ass man being threatened
by
like
a kid,
17-year-old
yeah.
kid, but people are stupid.
People are dumb. People are very dumb.
People are just dumb. And
he could also see the light in your path where you were like headed on a different trajectory. And there's no shade to being a college counselor at a high school. That's at a preparatory academy. Good for you.
It's a great job.
Yeah.
He did not do his job.
Yeah, and he could also see probably that you were headed for a bigger life, and it was like, yeah, there's jealousy.
I mean, I think it's, this is a much longer conversation, which you don't need to have, but like, I think that I think I've taught, and we could talk about this when we get into the service stuff. Like I've taught, and like sometimes you just see a kid as young as 5 years old, 6 years old. I was like, there's just something special about this kid, right? I think I'm good at that in Hollywood, where like sometimes you just see. I remember seeing Carl Tart.
Yeah.
On stage in his very first show playing Dr. No, and I was like, he was nervous, but I was like, he's got something special. Deanna Reasonova, same thing. I was like, they got it. So I'd like to think I would have seen that in me as a kid. Like I'm not to say that I'm special now, but I think I just had a drive and I had something, and I wasn't going to take no for an answer because, and again, that's also the benefit of like, what do I have to lose?
Sure.
I've already come from that, so I can only look forward, right? So I might as well look far, right? Why be myopic about my future, So, and I've kind of, Hollywood has certainly killed a lot of that spirit in me, but like, I know, I still dream big. But no, I also think that, and this is also to Yale's credit, like a lot of my classmates went to Harvard. I think there was, especially at the time, Yale was as much as it's that name, I think they were also just looking for different stuff. It wasn't about grades, and I went off to France, and I had my background, and I wrote about, I would write about this stuff and my family and and I was also very, to be honest, hazing was a really serious problem at the school. And when I came back from France, and I felt powerful, right? I felt like nobody can touch me because I've learned a foreign language, and I went off and slept it, I Eurorailed and slept on trains and beach, you know what I mean? Like I felt powerful. So when I came back senior year, I made it my mission to, as a senior, I was like, there is no hazing that is going to happen on my watch. And so I was very active and hazing, like that goes back years. I mean, hundreds of years. We still see reports of kids who are dying because of hazing. And I just made it my thing. And I protected the younger kids in my dorm, and much to my,
detriment.
I don't say this valiantly. I just said it's like, it happened to me. It's not going to fucking happen to anybody else. And I think that very much stems to childhood, right? Of like, I'm never, ever going to put up with the behavior that so many of us in those places are told we have to put up with. So I think that was probably part of, I have a feeling a teacher or somebody made contact with you. I have a feeling that maybe somebody reached out and advocated on my behalf, because I remember having a teacher who just kind of winked at me like, yeah, I had a feeling you were gay. And I was just kind of like, I think you were my Robin Williams. I think you were like that teacher who saw something and so to this day, I'm such a huge advocate for mentorship and just advocating for the people who, obviously paying it forward and stuff like that. But like when I see somebody who just needs a shot, like my energy is limited, but like I couldn't live with myself if I didn't try to do that for other people. And it's a bane of my existence in Hollywood. I know so many people, we can talk about this too, but like so many people who have made it, and they like literally, I have a kid I went to school with, literally has a policy of I don't help people.
That's
literally
fun.
Has said that.
What a fun way to live. What a great way to live. Like that's got to feel like self-esteem rising every day. Like,
right.
Yeah.
And that's their own shit. That's between them and their God or their therapist. But in any case, I mean, I think this like kind of that teacher advocating for me, going away to prep school, going away to Yale, and in Yale, while I was at Yale, I did a junior year abroad in China and Taiwan. And I think just that, like, if I can fly halfway around the world and do anything, regardless of what the occupation is, then I can do anything, So I say foreign languages is my superpower, but I think really it's that, like, I'm brave. I think I'm brave. That's one of the words I think that I'm not necessarily always funny. I'm not necessarily like the best at this or that, but like I'm brave as fuck. And part of it's because I didn't have a choice. You kind of have to. You either survive and hope that you thrive, or you get stuck, or you don't survive. So, yeah, I think it was the like, I just have to keep marching forward, and if it's going from here to Burbank, or if it's going from Ohio to freaking Taiwan,
Since we're on the honesty bravery tip, I just want to ask: was it ever lonely?
It's never not been lonely.
Oh, I'm crying.
And I'm like, that's the funniest thing.
Oh, it's never not been lonely. Can you expand on that?
Oh, yeah. I don't think I have. Listen, I write. I write a lot on, like even my like fictional writing, screenwriting and playwriting. I infuse like mental health themes in pretty much everything I write, because I had a therapist who was like, I think this is the thing that's going to save you is, if I can't be vulnerable in real life, I think my very first therapist, I would bring in Facebook posts. I would just write like rants on, you remember those days of me just ranting on Facebook. And he's like, you're a really good writer. I was like, yeah, that's not the point. So this thing, like, am I right? Am I right about this? Because like Hollywood is this, or like this person said this to me and da, 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 and it was in the scope of like what we were talking about in terms of therapy. And he was like, I think you should write. And whatever that looks like to you. And then I ended up writing a scene and taking it into my acting class, and everybody was like bawling, and I was like, oh, I think I'm onto something.
And that became The Forgotten Place, right? Wasn't that the inspiration?
That was one of the pieces. Yeah, we can talk about that in a second. But anyway, I think I can say on some level, I don't know that I've never, at least on some level, not been lonely every day of my life. Like I think that there's I think that's just part of my existence, and maybe that's the meaning of life, is to find some sort of peace where it's not about being lonely or not lonely. It's just about being comfortable and just being content. I think contentment is an underrated word, right? Like happiness is like, oh yeah, I don't know what the fuck that is, but like just to be content, you know what I mean, is my internal search. But yeah, I think like starting a new school as a kid and them going like, oh, you're a locker. Like there's no like, I'm going to surprise you. Like there's a loneliness in that because that means that you're different. And we know it's hard to be different, right? And you can be different for a lot of great reasons and a lot of not so great reasons, but I think it's very hard to be different. And in my family environment, I was very different. I knew that I was different as a kid for many reasons. But I knew that I was different. People saw that I was different. The way we used to process it as kids, people would be like, so like mom had sex with the mailman. You know what I mean? Like that was kind of the joke, right? Because it was like, because there's no way you're your father's child, right? Because my father was a very bad man. And so, whatever being different means to you. But I think it's a very, being the good kid is a lonely existence because you have to live a certain way that is not always truthful to where you are in that moment in your life. Like you might just be in a shitty phase where you don't want to be so nice to everybody, right? And it's like, but yeah, loneliness. If you were to see, I'm actually doing a benefit show for a mental health center to raise money in May, and I'll be very curious. I shall invite you.
I'll be there.
I would love you to come. I'd love you to come. But for anybody who's seen my work like on a stage, and I've done a couple shows and stuff, and I think I always say like, those themes come through. I think in every single piece that I write, like there's that just trying to find, loneliness is one word, and another is just trying to find your place in the world, and inherent to trying to find your place in the world is loneliness, because you're trying to figure out where you belong, and whether it's Hollywood or Canton, Ohio, or Taiwan, or sitting at a movie premiere with my friend Kate. You know what I mean? Like you're still trying to figure out where you belong. Or I am. I shouldn't say that about everybody. Some people are just like, I'm at a movie premiere, and I'm just like, I'm trying to figure out where I belong.
Same.
Yeah.
No, it's so. Oh, Jeff, you just said it so profoundly and perfectly. I'm glad I asked, because that is so. I identify so hard with "It's Never Not Been Lonely." Like that is woof, Chile. Like fuck you for making me cry, but also like woof.
Sending you love. I had such pressure. I listened to some of the other episodes. I was like, oh my God. Because I think I'm a generally funny person.
You are.
But I was like, I know we're gonna get into some shit, and I'm pretty open, and I try to be vulnerable about that stuff because I don't think I'm gonna survive if I don't. Like I have to be open about that stuff. And I'm like, but some of it's funny though, right? And then sometimes like, no, dude, that's not funny. You've never not been lonely. That's not funny, dude. Like, are you okay? And I'm like, no, but like I can still laugh about it because what else am I gonna do?
What else? What's our option? Like,
what is your other option?
Yeah, I totally. And that's why we get into art, right? It's like, it's the whole thing is like, we are, especially when you aim as high as Hollywood, it's like you are trying to force your way into finding a place in the world. And I think that's, it's profoundly honest. This is my favorite shit. I don't care. This is my favorite type of
talk. I want to do a podcast so bad, just talking about art and mental health. And then something I'm like, oh, there's so many fucking podcasts. But I've been a host for most of my life at this point. You know what you're doing. So I'm like, I feel like I feel like it's, I know what it's, I remember, just side note, I remember Kristen Bell. She was one of the first people to be openly talk about anxiety. Mm-hmm. And I remember seeing her, and it was just blowing my mind because I had just been diagnosed with anxiety. And I'm like, anybody who knows me since a kid would be like, oh yeah. But they didn't know it at the time that I had anxiety. But like anybody now, would be like, yeah, you clearly have anxiety. You know what I mean? And I remember like it was such a life-changing moment of like, and her career is not going to be over. Maybe it won't. Maybe it'll be over. But I've made it like a mission. And part of it is, if you're a lonely person and you can help somebody else feel a little bit less lonely in the world, you by default will also feel a little bit less lonely in the world.
That's it. That's the whole shit.
This is not just me being like, I'm so kind. I just
No.
want you all to feel less lonely.
It benefits
like,
you too.
I want to feel less lonely.
Yes.
And so if you say, if you saw a short of mine and went like, you went like, oh my God, you told my story. And I'm like, that makes me feel a little better about my existence.
1,000%.
So like, oh, cool, awesome.
Yeah. I love it. Okay, well, before we get out of this section. So get us up to today. How can people see you? Because I know there's clips of you online speaking Mandarin. You are so effing fluent. It's insane. Like I've watched the clips and just been like, he is fully saying words right now. That sounds like noise. Yeah. It is so cool. Like it is such
fully saying words.
You just do it with like, you just rattle. So how did you, because you hosted the red carpet at the Golden Globes. So like, how did that, like, can people see clips of you doing that? Like
you can just Google or YouTube Jeff Locker and you'll see all sorts of, there's everything from like my TV shows that I hosted in Taiwan and China to me doing radio to the Golden Globes to, I acted, I did soap operas in Mandarin. Like there's, I'm fluent as fuck. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, and I still do work here. Like I did a Mandarin language TV game show here in LA that I hosted, a whole season of, you know what I mean? So I still, honestly, my bread and butter is still very much around Mandarin or the fact that I speak Chinese and I'm invited to host a lot of Asian events. And sometimes like, you don't even need to speak Mandarin, but like, just, you get us, you know what I mean? Like I lived in Asia for 15 years. So like, you get how we work, you get how this process is going to go.
For an A student, that's the biggest compliment. When someone comes up to me and is like, you figured out shit other people didn't, especially other white people, I'm like, I get a prize. This feels amazing.
I got the biggest gold sticker ever, right? Oh, yeah. I fully say for what I do, for first of all, I think I'm just a good host anyway. Like,
you are.
When I don't speak any Mandarin, like I've done a lot of events where they didn't even know that I spoke Mandarin. I just did an event in Vegas last month, and at the very end, I just said a bunch of shit in Mandarin, and the crowd just went.
Oh, I love that.
People were coming up to me during the show and be like, "You're really great," and and I'm like, "Man, I haven't even spoken Mandarin." You know what I mean? But then when I do speak Mandarin, then just like it's like an SNL sketch. Like brains are just like, you know what I mean? People are like, "What is happening?" And if there's Chinese speaking people there, their minds blow. But like, the non-Chinese people. So anyway, I say like I'm already a really great host. This is a thing I do well. I've trained, hosting is, I got very frustrated when I first came to LA because, it's like everything was going digital and like every pretty person could just submit to hosting jobs. And then I would go in to audition and they would be like, you're the only person who got through the copy. There's a teleprompter, right? And that's part of your audition. They'd be like, you're the only one who can actually read the teleprompter. And it's like, that's your basic skill set, and it's because anybody could submit. So, but in terms of like what I do, what is unique about me, the fact that I am like fluent, I'm a great host, obviously fluent in English and fluent in Mandarin, and I get both. I can code switch.
I wondered.
You know what I mean? So if my audience is mainly Chinese speaking or Asian, I know there's that goofy I can do my goofy, funny, cute Jeff. And then when it's, a mainly local, domestic audience or like whatever, if I'm doing a thing for IBM America, you know what I mean? I'm like, I know how to do that. So in terms of what I do and what makes me special, and that's adding the Mandarin into it, I don't have any qualms of saying I'm one of, if not the best in the world at what I do.
I love that.
Like I can just say that. I'm like, when I'm negotiating my price now, and also like I'm older and I don't give a fuck anymore. Like this is what I want. This is my price. And my price has like gone up in the last year because I'm like, I don't care. You're not going to get somebody better than me for what your needs are. And I'm starting to get paid more for it because I think they're recognized, and I think there's sometimes they're like, listen, I'm one of the best in the world. I can't even name another person who can do what I can do. And isn't that the thing? Like, aren't we all looking to be able to do something that nobody else can do? Like, not to say that we're, I don't know. I mean, I like feeling a little special and I worked, and I didn't just show up.
No.
I mean, I certainly did in Taiwan. I just went and I was like,
I got this.
And we could talk about that whole career. But at some point, I went from being like the jokey little funny token white guy to like, I was up for jobs that had nothing to do with me being a white guy. It just was that good. Yeah. So it's taken a long time to get to like, yeah, I'm that good and I deserve to be paid accordingly. And if you don't want to pay it, that's great. Find somebody else, but
Yeah.
I'm going to make your event. So just to cap it with the Golden Globes, that was I had my own stage. I wasn't the main red carpet host. I was like, it was crazy, dude. It was like Ryan Seacrest and Good Morning America, me, and it was like, and like Access Hollywood, and like they were looking at me like, who
Who
is
is
this
this
guy?
guy?
Because I was with STX, which is a well-known media company, and Tencent, which is a well-known Chinese company, and they were going to do a live, like for a Chinese company to even have a presence there. And this is the 75th, so it was like six
Big
years
deal.
ago. Like China was just spending tons of money in Hollywood, and they would go from Ryan Seacrest and so to me, but I was doing a live telecast, so I was translating. I was doing simultaneous translation of the interviews, but the celebrities would walk up to me going like, "Here's just another guy," and then they'd be like, "You're so cool," and like Octavia Spencer and Jessica Chastain like kind of walked up my stage. I was like, "Holy shit! I didn't know I was gonna be talking to you." And like we're immediately like, and I'm interviewing them, and then I turned to my B camera, which was China, and I translated, and like they're like, "What is happening?" Because nobody told them. They just were doing another like Aaron Sorkin, one of my idols as a writer. He had no idea, and you could see him on camera when I'm speaking, man. And he's just sitting there like, Aaron Sorkin is looking at me like I'm amazing, which is just like, what is happening in the world? And then he's like, well, had I known, I would have learned Mandarin. And I'm like, I love you, Aaron Sorkin. I did not say that part, but I'm like, there's all these people. I hope that I have a career so that I can then, all the people I've interviewed all the years, who I can say, I interviewed you in, like Tom Cruise, I interviewed you in Taiwan, or Charlize Theron. Like, I'm that guy. And they'll be like, oh my God, you're the guy that speaks Mandarin. Like, I'm hoping I get, and then also, I'm considering you for the lead in my new, series on Apple.
Let's go. Let's go.
Yeah, let's go.
That's the
Yeah.
goal. That's amazing. I love all of that, and it's just wild. It's such an impressive skill, and it's also something that
Thank you.
I feel like you bring so much to the table, and that's such a lovely like addition that you could just fully bust out a seat. Like you could improvise in Mandarin, which is that's.
I have with people who've gone off to
God.
do. Jenny Yang, I don't know if you know
Yeah.
Jenny Yang, she's fantastic.
Yeah.
They did at the Clubhouse, they did an all Mandarin improv show, and the audience was almost all non-Mandarin speakers. And so it was like me and Jenny Yang, I can't remember some of the other people. And it was just so
Wild.
This is before Jenny Yang. Jenny Yang's like now a big deal, right?
Yeah.
And it was just and I think she and I were the most fluent speakers. But like to improvise anyway is weird. But to improvise in Mandarin was just, it was so weird, but we're also like, the audience didn't give a shit. Like they're like, this is the weirdest, awesome,
Yeah.
So
Well, so
yeah.
okay, before we get to the next section, so where can people see you? So just Google you, and like, do you have stuff that's like out right now that you want people to see, or what do you?
Social media, I'm just a Jeff Locker. So Instagram, fuck Twitter. I'm trying to get off.
Me too.
But it's. I know I'm a news junkie, and so like trending topics is still a thing. But also fuck Elon Musk. I'm very active on Threads, which I think is awesome.
Oh, okay.
I'm a huge proponent of Threads, which is the kind of
Their
Instagram,
competitor.
Meta world,
Yeah.
Twitter. Very active on that, and there's like a lovely community. I'm pretty political, but I'm not a jerk.
Okay.
And then and then I don't know. You can Google me. I don't have any. At the moment I don't. I mean, I have this benefit show which is on May 4th. I don't know when this will air, but it's on May 4th at the Colony Theater. So I mean, if you follow me on social media or go and check it out, it's just a collection of 7 of my favorite short plays that I've written, most of which have won like various awards around the world. And it's to benefit a great mental health foundation that provides low cost therapy for those in need. So we have people, we have a foundation that's going to match what we make and double it. You know what I mean? So it's turning into a whole thing. Yeah. It's going to, and there's a nice little story weaving in and out of these pieces. That is kind of my journey with, mental health and therapy and things that I've learned and pain and loneliness and moments of peace. And it's called Peace of Mind. So it's like it's to be able to, I'm not in seeking happiness. I'm just seeking peace of mind. Just let me feel peace. Yeah. So if you're out and about, I think it's going to be a really great show, and it's for a great cause.
I love it. Okay.
And then otherwise, I have stuff.
Okay, that's
Nothing
good.
big.
Jeff has stuff, everybody.
Yeah. I have a couple I have a couple like projects that are coming up, but I got to sign the contract. So.
Oh shit, here we go. Okay, well, folks, now that you've learned all of that, I have more questions, but I'm going to leave it. We hope you enjoyed your apps. Let's move on to the entrees after a quick break. Okay, folks, that's going to do it for us here at Service from Hell with part 1 with my lovely friend, the playwright, author, general, dope human being, Jeff Walker. And he will join us next week to tell us even more crazy stories about his hosting life and his general customer service journey. So join us then for even more wacky stories. Thank you, folks, so much for listening. Good night.